how weird did you get in your own head in Africa over the 220? Because you did have sleep stops and everything, which helps.
I actually, you had a conversation. I can't remember. I was looking at podcasts and stuff. You had a conversation with someone about this, about whether it's like not harder to do 250 all in one go, or the 250 side, like your, is it Johnny does?
Yeah,
he does like the multi-day ones.
Yes,
and you don't really sleep in that, do you? Like the sleep.
No, I think it was with Johnny talking about the Arctic, because essentially,
Yeah.
I think he was so nervous the night before that he got about half an hour of sleep, which meant he went into it destroyed.
It was really funny. My root recovery was like 30%, 2%, 1%, 1%. And then on the last day, I was in so much pain, I wasn't sleeping. So I took a codeine to go to bed. And I woke up in the green. 5 days into an ultra, I was like, this is mental. Like, I've actually slept. And we had, to be fair, the day before we started really early. So we had a lay-in. We started at like 4 a.m. on the last day, which was a lay-in. Day before was 2, which was where I'll get onto with the mental stuff. That was the hardest day. But yeah, the sleep was like a big factor. Because you're in a tent as well in Africa. It's like, it's not comfortable sharing it with a random bloke.
Can't imagine it's particularly sort of
like race
optimal
bag,
temperature.
Race bag under your feet, like your smelly shoes next to you, like all your gears in there. It was intense. But yeah, on the fourth day so we did like 30, 40, 50, 60k day on the fourth day, and that was my birthday, which is kind of the reason I planned to do the race in the first place. I was like, cool, this is going to be a sick birthday, like go out there for a week in Africa, like never experience that again in my life, do you know what I mean? So started at 2 a.m, sleep was like non-existent, was in really bad pain. I got injured like 2 days in, on my knee was just like blowing up, and I'd never had knee issues before. It was really weird. Obviously my body just screaming to like chill out, stop, or whatever. So I was climbing this hill, and the worst bit was the downhills. So the 60k day was 10k up, like up, down, but up in the dark. And then it was like 10k straight down, like really intense. And then it was 42k just flat. And I was like, something like that. And I was like, I know I can get to the flat and shuffle, it would be fine. But I was going to struggle on the downs. So I was building it up in my head as this like really hard thing. And I started off slower than I did any other day. The first day I'd come like 10th. And then obviously I used competing with other people as a metric to help me, motivate me and stuff. And the second and third day where I got injured, I was like 30th, then 20th-ish. And I was like, right, like I'm quite slow starting today. And people were overtaking me that hadn't been seen most of the race. So I was like, oh, fuck, like getting in my head about it. Was getting up this hill, was almost like making excuses in my head about why it would be okay to quit because I've injured myself. And I can just be like, well, it wasn't my time, I didn't do this in training, this is like all this stuff. And then there was a way you could pull out of a day and then finish the race still. But obviously if I pulled out on the last day, I wouldn't have finished. So I was in my head going, well, if I pull out today, I save 50k. I can still go back tomorrow and do it non-competitively. And I still finish technically. So I was making this excuse up in my head, got to the top of this hill, crying at this point, sat down at the aid station, and people going past me. And I was just like, felt miserable, just hated myself for like giving up basically, even though I hadn't actually given up. I like in my head I'd given up, checked out, and I was like, do you know what? No, I'm gonna go. So I just got up, took a paracetamol, got up and just started going, and I used everyone as like checkpoints to catch up. So after I got down the downhill, it was really hard, like killed me. Once I got flat again, I was like, right, I can just pick everyone off now one by one, and that will keep me going. And that's how I got through it. And that day was like the biggest achievement I've done. Even finishing the race wasn't as big as finishing that day because it was such a battle.
Yeah. Properly scrapped yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the biggest thought kind of thing I had.
Well, there's a few things there. Number one, running around Ibiza, you're not going to have anyone to compare yourself to on a leaderboard, which is very, very different.
Yep.
And number two is that, given my recent experience of running 250k in one go, the battle that you have where you're at the top of a hill crying your eyes out thinking fuck this, I'm done, and then punishing yourself because you feel like a little wet wipe because you've decided to throw the towel in, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to crack on. Yeah, that'll happen a fair few times.
Yeah, I bet it will.
So it's that's kind of the fun of it, really. I mean, Jamie, who was sitting over there, ran 100k of support with me and witnessed my worst moments. The worst moments were just over 100 miles and just over 200k for me. Those were like proper
do you think
meltdowns.
that was because it was a mental milestone, and you was kind of thinking, if I can get to 100 miles, then that's a big achievement, and then I can do this next. Do you know what I mean? And
it was actually, but both times were terrain related.
Okay.
And so the first breakdown, I actually felt really good. Like up until I felt as good as I could expect at, I think whatever it was, about 80 miles or so, knowing that I was getting towards the 100.
Yeah.
But the section just before the 100, Inversnaid along the West Highland Way, Inversnaid to the top of Loch Lomond, fuck me, you can barely move more than 2 kilometers an hour there. It's you can't run. If you run, it's about 20 yards, and then you're hand on knee, step up, slippy rock. It's just like you can't run it. You can't even walk it quickly,
especially not in the summer.
And not, I did it in the winter to be fair, but it's especially when I'm 80 miles deep already. Yeah. So it was that, and then I just felt so destroyed. And it was the mental battle that I was kind of working as hard as I could to keep moving forwards and just going nowhere.
Yeah,
I think that's what really got to me. So it was a big mental punch in the face, which then just made me much more aware of the physical stuff, which made me just start to think about, you've got so far to go. You've got another, basically, what was it, 90k at this point, more or less, 85, 90k to go. This is impossible. There's no way you're going to be able to get this done. This is ridiculous. And then the mind starts to unravel. Managed to make it through. Got to sit down on a park bench to get some food on board, have a chat with Johnny, and just sort of think, right, okay, let's crack on. Next couple of sections were really, really positive, and the physical pain I was less aware of. It was having less of a catastrophizing effect on me.
It's mad how you go through them phases. And mine was the same. Like the day I got injured, the second day was so slow after, and it started really early, and then I was wrapping my knee up every aid station, wasn't helping. And then the last 3 miles, I was like sprinting again. It was so weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
And I started the next day okay, and then I fell apart. And then the next day I started in an awful position. I mean, it's... Yeah.
It was 208k, I think. 200 to 208k was awful because there was a section that I'd ran in the past in the snow, so it was quite soft underfoot, and it was a beautiful, beautiful part of the world, one of the best parts of the whole route. But I was doing it in the dark. I was already 200k deep.
Yeah.
It's a pretty bad situation to be in, whatever the terrain. But there was no snow, so underfoot it was just horrible underfoot. Like I felt it was like lots of little like pebble dash almost. It was just I felt like I was getting spiked on my feet for ages. Weren't moving quickly. You can't determine inclines in the dark. You just see path, so you don't really know how to attack anything. Tiredness was really setting in, and all these things just compounded. And I just mentally I just had an absolute wobble at that point. Again, brought it in, got myself back together and got moving again. I was destroyed at this point, but again, mentally, I was unraveling, which made me much more aware of the physical rather than I'd hit a point where my body was like, no, you actually can't continue. Yeah. It was all in my head, which meant that going through that process, it wasn't all in my head. There was blood in my shoes.
Yeah.
But it was... it just goes to show how much going through the reps of doing those things is valuable, because you come out the other side like you did at the top of that hill on your birthday. Is that's where the value is in doing the training to get to the event and then actually experiencing the thing itself, because there's not many people doing a 5-day multi-ultra 220k that breeze the whole thing, and if there are, then they're probably racing snakes. So it's a very fascinating experience.
Definitely not doing a 50k week leading up to it and then just... Yeah.
So I think the things that will be most exciting will be when hallucinations start. I say exciting in a sort of morbid way.
The sleep deprivation stuff. I am going to do a little bit leading up to it.
Yeah.
But that's where I know I'm shit when I don't sleep properly. And I did a little bit of Mykonos actually. I purposely didn't sleep enough, and I got up at like 4 a.m. to get going really early and did like a half marathon in the heat. And I learned a little bit about like shade and like maybe planning the route to kind of avoid, to make it a bit easier initially, because obviously day 2 then you end up on the other side anyway. But like, do you know what I mean? Like coming up on the right side of the sun, or the wrong side, so I'm in the shade maybe.
Yeah, so it gives you start point.
Yeah, so, it gives you a couple extra hours of like non-heat exhaustion and whatnot.
That's a big part actually, because if you can do the most exposed bits in the dark, then you'll get battered by the sun less.
Yeah, so I just thought like, did you learn in it? So like when you do these training runs, it's not just about conditioning yourself to like run 40k. It's like you learn all these little things, like simulating the race or the run itself. You learn little things that actually might be really beneficial, because you should sweat all the small stuff. I think is so important.